Oh my word, this is gonna be an absolutely insanely tough video to make again, bro. It's crazy how much changes in just a short few weeks. So today, we're tier listing all 48 Call of Duty pros heading into stage 4 of the CDL. Of course, this is gonna be the first stage where we have a LAN major at the end. It's going to get insanely spicy in this video. So without further ado, we have a lot to talk about and how we're ranking these guys. So let's get right into that one. Let's go. So again, we've got the tiers, pretty straightforward. The 6 tiers, and we use numbered tiers because otherwise I could play it soft, I could play it easy, I could put a lot of guys in one tier. And really, I'm just making it tougher on myself to have to make really difficult decisions with certain guys. Like the top 14 is the A, then the B tier, and then, you know, the 15th best guy could be in the B tier. So it's really close, and you're nitpicking some of these guys, but that's why it gets fun. That's why it gets spicy. And again, how we normally rank these guys is think like if you're trying to build a super team for stage 4, the best team that you could build heading into stage 4, this would be the tier list you'd look at to try to build that team and go off the individual talent of those guys. Obviously, there's more to consider with like roles and different ways that guys play, but that's what we're gonna try to talk about in this video. And again, you have to really take into account the individual talent, their ability to win gunfights, pop off to make those big time plays. Of course, I also very much value consistency, and you're gonna hear that a lot in this video, is talking about the consistency across all 3 game modes, which I'm sure I'll mention a lot. And then you're also talking about the value that they bring to the team and just the overall ability of a player. There's so many different variables you have to consider, which we talk about a lot on this channel. So without further ado, let's get right into this one. It's going to be really interesting, and it's gonna get tough. So let's go into player number 1. Alrighty, up first, we got none other than Clayster, and this is very straightforward, straight into the A tier. He's been a fantastic player, especially these last 2 stages. And then since they brought in Hydra, of course, New York has been dominant. Clay has been great. Obviously, in the major, they end up going to the finals. From the winner side, they fall short to Faze in the best of 9 grand finals, but Clay was an incredibly important part of this team, obviously brings so much in the leadership aspects, and his gunny has been nice with it, man. You've got to respect the old dude's gunny this year. And stage 3, he was great inside of respawns, and as a whole, you just gotta love what Clay brings to the table as a player. His consistency, his leadership, overall ability for the New York Subliners is insane. Clay is definitely an A tier player. He's fantastic. Oh, next we've got Attach, and again, another really tough guy here because my initial instinct would be the B tier. So realistically, it comes from the really struggle for him specifically in Search and Destroy this stage, and the overall struggle for the Rokkr as well definitely matters in the bigger picture as well, even from individual performances. It definitely wasn't the greatest stage for Attach, and dropped him down just a little bit probably in my rankings as a whole with his individual performance. He really struggled in Search and Destroy, but was really good inside of Control, and so that's what gets really tough for me, is when you're just really struggling that bad inside of Search and Destroy. That's why I'm kind of dropping him into the B tier right here, but still, he's a fantastic player and a valuable part to the Rokkr, and maybe in their rebound now with Major Maniac in the lineup, it'll be really interesting. So Attach is inside the B tier. He's a great player. All right, so we got one of the new kids on the block again here. Alex is back in the London Royal Ravens starting roster again. So many changes this week inside the CDL. I'm gonna throw him in the E tier, unfortunately, because we haven't seen him in months at this point since the beginning of the year, and it's hard to imagine he's gonna come out and fry. But man, we've seen crazier things though. You never know. But at the end of the day, Alex was obviously so great for the Rokkr last year in the first half of the year. The end of the year, things started kicking into, things started struggling a little bit for the Rokkr, of course. And then you head into the beginning of the year for London, where Alex wasn't by any means great, and now he hasn't been playing COD for a while. So we'll see what happens. Definitely not a great situation for London, but you know, Alex could surprise us, but gotta drop him in the E tier for the beginning of the year right now. So Neptune is up next. Another tough guy to grade because we saw some really impressive performances from him early on in the major, but then the struggles kicked in again when they started moving up in the bracket a little bit. And Neptune shows so many flashes of being an incredibly good player. And so I still absolutely love the potential from Neptune, but I'm going to throw him in the E tier for now. Again, those first 2 series though of the major, especially the first series, was insanely impressive against LA Thieves. The clutch factors from Neptune and the snappy ability that he has, and again, the playmaking ability is really crucial in these rankings. And so I could see Florida making a big time run heading into stage 4. and Neptune would be at the core of that if they end up doing it. He has all the potential in the world to be an insanely good player. Things just need to click more consistently for him, game in and game out, and then they'll be in a really good spot. But that's obviously easier to say than to do. So we got back-to-back Florida teammates here up, and so Skies is up next, and I'm gonna throw him straight in the A tier, man. You know, if you watch around here, you know I love me some Skies, and I think he's an insanely talented player and is just so versatile. Playmaking ability across all 3 game modes. As the main AR for Florida, he's insanely valuable. And, you know, I love how he plays Search and Destroy. I love how he plays Control, Respawn. As a whole, he's just a really, really well-rounded player and insanely talented across the board. And I love me some Skies. Last time, he had a really tough stage 2. And so I did drop him, I think, down into the B tier in the last tier list video, but he really showed up again here in stage 3, and so I have a lot of confidence with Skies, and if I had to build a team, I would love me some Skies in that lineup. He's a great player for sure. So Zaptius is up next, and again, another really difficult person to figure out here. Man, in the major, Zaptius looked really, really good in their first 2 series against Legion, against the Rokkr. We saw some insane improvement from him, where we saw some of the upside slaying that we've been waiting to see for Zaptius in this London lineup. And then of course now he gets dropped, and he supposedly is on Paris at this point. It's not officially confirmed yet, but it's looking that way. So I'm going to grade him, or rate him in this list for sure. So it gets in a really tough situation where he was trending towards probably a C tier, but I'm gonna keep him in the D tier for now, where I see the potential for him as a player. And, you know, maybe it works with Paris, and he kicks it into gear, and then suddenly Zaptius is right there with the best of them in heading into stage 5. But for now, it's hard to see that road really working out. But I guess we're gonna have to see. Zaptius showed a lot of improvement, but I'm just not convinced yet. Pristini's up next, another guy, man, where in stage 2, Pristini showed so much improvement. We saw him dominate inside of a lot of hardpoint maps, and the Search and Destroy improved. And then in the stage 3, it kind of regressed back, and Seattle really struggled. And that's why Decimate ended up, you know, dropping out, or, you know, hitting the bench again, or dropping himself from Seattle, supposedly. Obviously, some tough situations there for Seattle right now. I'm going to put Pristini as well inside the D tier. Again, you know how much I love Preston and how well he can play at points, but the consistency has always been the question for Pristini. And it's just hard to see that right now. Hopefully they can bring in a guy that really unlocks Preston and allows him to play more consistently game in and game out. And they need to make a roster change that works big time for him in this stage, obviously. But it does get really, really interesting. So Havoc is up next. And man, Havoc's also a really tough guy to grade, because I would love to see a high slaying upside player in that Florida lineup. And I'm just not a huge fan of how Havoc plays. I think I'm going to throw him inside the E tier for now. Definitely a tough situation. I don't think he's a bad player by any means. He's just kind of a low upside player. And so maybe it's more about how I see him in like a roster construction situation, where realistically as a player, he's by no means a bad player. He can definitely be a contributing player on a very, very good team, but I just don't see the upside for him as a player in like the top 24 type sense, or a top 15 sense. And so maybe that's why he's just more of like the boring player. Kind of lends me to put him inside the E tier. I'm going to keep Havoc in the E tier for now. But on the complete opposite side, man, we have Insight, and he has been insane. Obviously, last tier list video, we were just learning who Insight was. He only had a few matches played. He had looked fantastic, but I kind of kept him inside, I think, the B tier, maybe the A tier. And I wasn't exactly sure where to put him, because we had seen him play very, very well, but it had only been for a handful of matches. Now we know exactly who Insight is. He's nasty. He's straight up disgusting, and he is right up there with the best of them. It's hard not to put him inside of the top 6. I think I'm gonna have to do it. The top 6 players inside the S tier for Insight. He has been insanely good. There's a lot of really good players in the CDL, so it's gonna be interesting to see where some of these other guys end up finding, or, you know, sifting out here. I mean, the Toronto players, guys like Cammy and Kleenex, it's going to get spicy for sure the rest of this video. So we'll see. All right, Paul is up next. Another guy who can be really, really tough to grade. I've really enjoyed watching Paul this year. And so he's probably like right here on the C or D tier, right on the fringe probably. Man, I think I'm going to put him in the C tier and give him a little bit of the tiebreaker, throwing him in there with another fellow rookie, I guess, with Neptune. Paul's gun skill is insane. Obviously, the map to map, he can be very inconsistent. certain maps we know we can trust Paul on right now. Like we've seen him on Checkmate do some insane things, but we need to see that. Like I said earlier in the video, consistency is going to be the theme of this video per usual, and that's just the case for Paul as well, from map to map, and there's so much potential there for him as well, but we'll keep him in the C tier for now. Obviously, we got Simp up next. I think we all know where he's headed. He's been a mainstay inside the S tier for a while now, and obviously after Faze's dominant run there in the major, it's not gonna change. Though Simp did not have his best stage he has ever had, but still a fantastic player and crucial for Faze's success as the champions of the CDL currently. And so it's going to get very, very interesting moving forward for Faze and for Simp as well, and see how he plays in stage 4, especially headed into land. Afro's up next, another guy who joined the London starting lineup, well, supposedly, this week as well. I don't think it's really fair to put him anywhere besides the E tier right now, considering he hasn't had the most impressive amateur showing so far this year. Me and Shift were talking about that. Shift was very low on Afro. I'm not as low on Afro, because I think we still saw that potential for him last year in Modern Warfare. So maybe you can surround him with some more talented players, he can make something happen, but I'm not confident that's going to be the case, and that's why he's going to head into the E tier for now, as his debut in the CDL is going to happen in stage 4. Okay, so now Draws is up next, and he's going to be another guy that's going to be really tough to grade. I already know that LA Thieves, oh, and we got Hook, the next guy, oh my word. These guys are going to be really difficult to grade, because at the end of the day, LA Thieves, we know the potential that they have. That's probably been by far the most common word you've heard about LA Thieves in the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks, was when they brought in Hook, the potential. Obviously, they didn't live up to the expectations in the major. After smoking London, of course, then they got smoked by Toronto. Obviously, the raid where they got 14-point clubbed, and then they got 100-point clubbed on Checkmate as well. But Draza, as a whole, though, has been very impressive in the CDL since he joined again, and I'm right there on like that B-ish tier. Probably will keep him in the B tier for now. But again, he can be a very valuable asset to a team, and he's right there on the fringe of probably top 14 inside the A tier there. He's been awesome, and you gotta love what you've seen from Draza. As with the Krig in hand, he is really, really good. And I'm excited to see what LA Thieves can do moving forward. Speaking of LA Thieves, Hook is up next. Another shocker, very difficult guy to grade as well. With Dallas early in the year, he was nasty, disgusting, and a top 6 player at one point, I think in maybe the first or second tier list of the year. And now Hook, we saw some struggles, especially inside Respawn, where in Search and Destroy, Hook was very, very good. He led the league with the highest first blood win percentage, an 84.62% first blood win percentage in the CDL during stage 3. And he averaged 2.15 first bloods per round, which was, I think, the best in the CDL as well. So he has been awesome in S&D, but the thing is, it has not been the case inside of in respawns necessarily. So it's tough to kind of figure out where I want to put him. He's right on the fringe of top 14 as well, I would say, but I'm going to drop him into the B tier for now. But again, that could look really dumb by the time we roll into the final tier list, I guess, which is crazy to think of. Heading into stage 5 will be pretty wild. This could look dumb because LA Thieves could start frying here, and who would obviously be a big part of that. And I think the first blood situation does testament sort of how LA Thieves wants to use Hook as the island player, as the flank guy, as the route guy, if you want to call him that, inside of Search and Destroy specifically, where he's playing for those first bloods, and that's kind of his role for LA Thieves right now, and that's kind of how Hook likes to play in general anyway. I think Hook's a fantastic player, but they still need to figure some things out, and that's why I'm going to put him in the B tier for now. If I was building a team, he would definitely be in consideration, but there are so many talented guys, and I know that they're coming up here on the list, that I think he's going to have to be in the B tier, which is just mind-blowing. By the time that we look at this at the end, that should feel about right, but we'll see. So now we got Silly, and this is, I think, the first LAG player we have so far as well, who, of course, is going to be a difficult team to grade in the same way. So what's interesting about Silly, and I saw him talking about this on Twitter like just a few days ago, was about his struggles this year so far and the inconsistencies from him specifically, considering now he had to make a full role change from Flex to SMG, and one thing he said that, you know, is very true is that this year, because there isn't really very many maps where you're running 3 SMGs or 3 ARs or whatever, is that the flex roll this year is very, very different than past years where, you know, in certain years, you've literally had full-on different guns that Flex is used, and at the least, Flexes would be, you know, using an SMG or using an AR more often than not, or the other. But so far this year, there's basically just had a 2 SMG and a 2 main AR meta, or 2 AR meta. And so you haven't really had those flexes haven't been as valuable this year as they often are in many other games. So a guy like Silly, who has to transition to a main SMG this year, or then swap to an AR, now swap back to main SMG, depending after they brought in Chino, he's been put in a really tough spot, and he mentioned that in his tweet, and I was like, that's a really good point. I agree with that. As a whole, he's probably right on the fringe of the C and D tiers. I'm gonna probably slot him in the D tier still, which is unfortunate, but I really, really like how Silly plays, and he is a really valuable asset to the team. He plays a really tough role for LAG, so I completely agree with him in that regard. So, all right, we got Aqua up next, and man, another guy who I really want to put higher, but just knowing how many insane names we have coming up on the list, man, I think I'm gonna throw him in the D tier as well, probably. That doesn't feel great. Paris have obviously had their struggles, and Aqua started off the year so well, but that has not been the case stage 2, stage 3, and I would say probably his worst stage so far this year. I just don't have a lot of confidence in how he's playing right now. If anything, I'd have him maybe towards the back of the D tier, and we'll see who ends up in the E tier as well. But Aqua's a really, really tough guy to grade, and I think he has a lot of potential with Paris, and I hope that Zaptius can help kind of iron out the issues that they're having, and then maybe that'll help Aqua play a little bit better individually. But that's just that my confidence just isn't there for Aqua right now as a whole, and with the Paris Legion either. So it does make it tough for sure. So Asim's up next. Man, wow. Is he an A tier guy? He's right on the fringe of A and B tier, which definitely makes it tough. Man, I don't know. Wow, I'm actually a little speechless. I'm not sure. My initial instinct would be to say put him in the A tier, but because of the rise of Toronto and the absolute dominance there, and of course we haven't even talked about Hydra yet, it makes it really, really tough. So I'm probably gonna have to put him in the B tier with Hook and Draza and Attach. Again, some incredibly good players. It's insane how talented the CDL is. We'll probably talk about that more later too. He does so much dirty work for New York, and that's kind of always been the theme for Asim and in the talks that we have here with the tier list videos. He's willing to do whatever it takes to win, and I really, really appreciate that about him. And again, if I'm building a team, he's one of those guys who I would love to have on my team. The communication, the confidence, the energy he brings is awesome. He's a great player for sure, but at the same time, when you watch him in those series against the other great teams, the Fazes of the world, the Torontos of the world, and those types of teams, you know, Asim hasn't been as dominant this year. And so at the same time, I think he's a fantastic player, but you know, Hydra has been the slaying masterclass for them, and Asim took a little bit more of a backseat, which is totally respectable and understandable, and that's why he's in the B tier. So we'll stick him there for now. So another guy there is Formal, and this is also a really tough guy to grade because he hasn't had the best of stages, and it's good to see that, you know, OpTic made that run in the major to really rebound there a little bit. Formal hasn't been by any means outstanding, so I'm gonna throw him in the B tier for now. I think there's a little bit of a struggle right now with how he's trying to play off of the rest of the OpTic guys and where he really fits on the map with them right now. Definitely a little bit tough because like what we saw in the majors, that Dashy's been the guy just taking over with the Krig in his hand and slaying out and dominating on the map, getting those streaks and changing the game. And that necessarily hasn't been Formal's role so far. He's been a little bit more conservative, playing for map control and things like that. So someone's got to do it, and that's kind of been Formal so far. He's a great player, again, can be a valuable asset to a team for sure. So man, there are some tough guys to grade here. Standy's up next as well, and he's right there on the fringe of what I would see top 14, and there's so many talented guys who are currently in the B tier, and that just again goes to show the talent of the COD League. And I'm gonna throw Standy in the B tier as well with Attach. Again, the Rokkr guys have been really, really tough to grade considering their struggles that they've had as a team, the search and destroy woes that all of them have had. And so it's hard to say is how individually talented they all are when they're all kind of struggling at the same time. Going through a roster change, of course, bringing Major Maniac in again for accuracy. There's just a lot of variables there with Rokkr, so I'm gonna hedge my bets there and keep Standy in the B tier. But my goodness, we have seen the pop-off potential that Standy has had this year. And so would I be surprised if Standy goes out and dominates in stage 4? Of course not. And so I would love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see Standy go out there and dominate. We'll just have to see. We'll throw him at the top of the B tier for sure. So Stellium's up next. Again, pretty obvious here. I think he's got a slot right there in the S tier. Faze has been dominant. Stellium had an absolutely insane stage 3, a little bit calmer major, but an insane stage. But yeah, I thought Stellium probably deserved the player of the stage award, where Arcitys deserved the MVP of the finals. The dude was nasty. Well, really MVP of the stage 3 major, because Arcitys was nasty in that tournament. But either way, Stellium's disgusting and very deserving of a S tier spot. The dude is nuts. And it's going to get very spicy for Faze moving forward about how good these guys could actually be. We had some debates about whether or not these guys are already or going to be a dynasty and what it could take or what it already has happened. It was a fun debate. Anyway, you should check it out in the podcast. I highly recommend it. It was a good time. Also, check out the interview with I Hold Shift, or the new series 1v1 me bro that I posted yesterday. Lots of good stuff there. I'll probably talk about it at the end of the video as well, but it's a good time. Check it out for sure. So Dashy's up next, and my word, he is right on the fringe there of top 6. I'm gonna throw him on the tiebreaker section for now, just at the top here. Talk about him a little bit later as well. Oh my word, Cammy is in the same boat where he was absolutely insane, but I would imagine because we already have insight inside the top 6, I probably need to put Cammy in the A tier. But my goodness, talk about as clutch as a player could be. He is right at the top of the A tier. And I mean right at the top, because he is unbelievably good. And the clutch plays that he made for Toronto all throughout the major were mind-blowing. He was making plays for streaks, making clutch plays in round 11s, making clutch plays in game 5s of controls, in hard points, fine. Like, overall, insane. Cammy was awesome, and he's a ton of fun to watch. And that Toronto team is just overall a ton of fun to watch. They're a blast. So Crim's up next, and wow, it has been a struggle for Crim. We already have a pretty packed B tier, and he has had a really tough stage. We'll see what happens with this team, you know, heading into stage 4. We don't necessarily know who their 4th player is going to be, at least at the time of me recording this. And so we'll see. I mean, I'm not fully optimistic, but he could really prove me wrong here, and this could make me look really dumb, considering I'm gonna throw him into C tier, but he could be absolutely insane heading into stage 4. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. The struggle's been a little bit real for him, and I think there's just a lack of playmaking as a whole from Dallas, and I think Crim's been feeling that and trying to make a few more plays around the map, but it just has not been working. And there's a lot off with this team right now for Dallas, and I really hope that they can figure this thing out with a new player after replacing Felo. So Envoy is the next guy up as well. And again, another really nice turnaround for him in the major as well. I'm going to throw him in the A tier because, you know, even though he had a really solid major, there's still some question marks as a whole for OpTic, at least, you know, as a top 3 team. They're a top 4 team right now for sure. So Envoy's great. You love to see Envoy. You know, I'm a big Envoy fan with how he plays, and his play style is so valuable to teams. He still has a tendency to get caught a little bit too often when playing that rogue lone wolf, you know, isolated type plays, the ISO plays he makes on the map. And so I would like to see him dial that back just a little bit, especially in like the big time moments where I think he can get a little bit too aggressive and gets caught a little bit too often as well. But besides that, Envoy makes so many clutch plays. We saw him throughout the major making plays on the flank, and again, finding those 2 pieces, those 3 pieces, which are crucial and signs of great players, and they just find ways. They know the timings, and Envoy is the king of timings, the king of finding the openings, and he's right there with the best of them. So Apathy's up next. He's probably going to be in the D tier. I probably need to speed this up a little bit because we've already been going for a while, and we have a lot of players to go through as well. So this, I'm probably talking too much, but Apathy, I would love to see him bounce back. It's been a little bit of a slow stage and a half for him. LAG really needs that consistent slaying, and that hasn't been the case for Apathy right now, and I would love to see it happen. So Awakening's up next. I'm gonna throw him in the A tier as well. He's right there. He's been in the S tier before, but they had just a weird major as a whole after their win against LA Thieves, and then they go and get smoked by Subliners and 3-0'd by OpTic. And so the consistency is just a real question mark for this squad. And again, it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing if Havoc stays on the team. Do they try to make it work with them, or do they try to bring in somebody else? That'll be the question. And I'm not convinced either way right now, but one thing I am convinced about is that Awakening and Skies are nasty at this game, and so I'm throwing Awakening in the A tier for sure. He shoots as straight as it gets. his S&D has been a little bit lackluster the past stage or so, but at the end of the day, I still think Awakening is absolutely disgusting, and he'll be just fine moving into stage 4 and how they play as a whole, and we'll finally get to see him on LAN. That'll be a ton of fun, man. I'm looking forward to that for sure. All right, here we go. Abezy's up next, and again, it's hard not to put these Faze dudes in the S tier, bro. They're disgusting. They've been frying. He makes plays in all 3 game modes. His S&D was crazy. His clutch plays during the major were insane. And they're playing the best teams in the CDL, and he's still absolutely frying them. He is unbelievable. So Kleenex now is there as well. And if I put Cammy in the A tier, then I probably got to put Kleenex in the A tier as well. Again, Toronto's as a whole, they're just really the core of those 3. I mean, again, Bance is a very solid player, but Kleenex, Cammy, and Insight have been all unbelievable playmakers on an individual level for this squad the past basically month now. It has not slowed down. They look awesome, and I fully expect Toronto to be just as good moving forward and even on the LAN in stage 4. So you gotta love building some teams around Kleenex and those guys. They are fantastic. So Venom is up next. He probably slides right into that C tier for me, where he's definitely a solid player for sure and can be a contributor. But at this point, I don't see the high upside, like the high octane killing ability that it would take for Venom to be, you know, in that B, A tier, somewhere in there. So we'll leave him in the C tier for now. I really like what he can do. And again, LA Thieves is tough to grade because there's so much potential for that roster as well heading into stage 4. So Chino is the big man up next. D tier probably makes a lot of sense for Chino. I really like him as a player. And watching him is a ton of fun, and he's been a surprise for sure. And he has some very good moments in stage 3 for sure. So at the end of the day, the problem is that someone's got to go in the D tier, and there's some really good players in the B and C tiers. And just I think Chino just ends up falling down the list just a little bit there, which is just unfortunate. So Shotzzy, the next guy up here, and he has had his best stage 3 is by far his best stage of the season so far, and so he continues to climb back up this list. He is right near the tippy top of the A tier, I think. He is incredible and a ton of fun to watch. We'll see who ends up being their 4th, like I mentioned earlier. So Octane is up next. Where do you put Octane? Because in Search and Destroy, he was very good for Seattle during stage 2, and he had a lot of very impressive moments. And the problem is, inside Respawn, to hardpoint specifically, was not great for Octane. He had the highest S&D KD of stage 3, which is pretty crazy. 6th highest control KD of stage 3. The problem was, inside of hardpoint, he was the 44th in damage per death, and so he just wasn't getting it done there. Obviously, again, stats don't really mean that much. They're more context, and how I always do this is like I'm talking about these guys, then I look at the stats. So I'm not like basing my rankings off the stats. It's just more context as a whole for that. So Octane, I'm right in between the B and C tier. Man, I'm gonna leave him inside that tiebreaker for a second here as we see the other guys. Scump is real close there too. Man, but when you look at the guys who are currently in the B tier, I think you got to throw Scump in the B tier as well. He's an important contributor. We saw the big time plays he's made. S&D, he's still very good in. If he can bring that hard point back, we saw again in that Garrison map in the major where he dominated. That's a potential that Scump has. And we're waiting to see that on a consistent basis. Maybe LAN will bring that out, bring the demon out of him, and we'll see the insane Scump that we know he can be. So Bance is up next, and he's been the guy that has 100% surprised me in the best way possible. He has been so much fun to watch this year. And so he's probably like right in the middle of the B tier or so, but he's still a very valuable asset to the Toronto team. And I love how he's been playing so far, and he's been awesome. So you gotta respect that and how he's been playing. He brings a lot to the team in comms and communication, and across all 3 game modes, he's just very balanced, and you gotta love that and respect that about a guy like Bance. So Illy, well, we go from the guy who surprised me in the best way this year to the 100% the guy who surprised me in the worst way this year. Illy has been unbelievably disappointing, and so right now, I don't think there's any way to say that he's not inside the D tier. He's just really struggled. He's continued to fall down the list. And each stage I've given him, you know, more benefit of the doubt. And at this point, he's got to step up his game if you want Dallas to be a contender, an elite team. And so again, right now he's been playing the SMG in stage 3, but we saw a few flashes of brilliance, specifically on Moscow, where he went on some massive streaks. But besides that, it hasn't been great. And, you know, now we've seen him play the AR, we've seen him play the SMG, and so I guess we'll see who they end up picking up. They end up picking an SMG up, or if they pick up an AR. And so at this point, you gotta keep him in the D tier. It hasn't been great, and we'll have to leave it there for now. So Gunless is up as well. And man, I think, again, stage 2, we saw a very good Gunless. Stage 3, not so much. It has been a lot murkier waters. I'm gonna throw him in the C tier for now. Again, when you look at the guys who are currently in the B tier, we're getting pretty stacked here inside of the B tier, and that gets pretty freaking tough. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, I'm gonna have to probably throw him in the C tier. We'll see. He's a guy that could move, but I'm not exactly sure. Shawnee's up next as well, and he's been a guy who I've been very surprised with the past stage or so since our last major. Even though London didn't necessarily have the best stage, I paid a keen eye towards Shawnee and how he was playing the stage, because I really want to dial in and see the type of plays that he makes. And man, he really does make some unbelievably great plays for London. Positioning, snapping off for 2 pieces and 3 pieces, cleaning up the messes that his SMGs are leaving behind, and Shawnee does that incredibly well. So I'm gonna throw him into the C tier. I was really impressed with him this stage. He really grew on me as a player throughout this stage for sure. So Kenny's the next guy up, and this is the reason why I feel like we had to throw Gunless in the B tier, because Kenny is definitely, or in the C tier, because Kenny's definitely in the B tier. We'll move over Scump and Bance there. And yeah, Kenny has been awesome, and 100%, you know, one of those top half players. He has been fantastic, and you'll love to see it from him as the main AR. If anything, he's fringing on the A tier, but you know, those last 2 matches for LA Thieves the last match for LA Thieves was just a little bit worrying heading into stage 4. And so I'm lacking a little bit of confidence there from Kenny. Even though it was a tough loss against the Ultra, they should have been able to play better than that against them. And Kenny had a real tough series as well. So we'll see. It definitely hindered my confidence. I don't want to overreact too much. He's still at the top of the B tier, right near that top 15. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think the B tier is any disrespect. So Temp is up next, and another guy who struggled a little bit. I'm gonna throw him in the D tier as well. 2, 4, 6, 8. That's already 8. But then we might have to move some guys up. We'll throw Temp in the tiebreakers for now. We'll throw Scraps in the tiebreakers for now. We'll throw Assault in the tiebreakers for now. Mac, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Okay, we got one more spot in the B tier. We'll throw Mac in the B tier. He's very good. With New York, we've only seen him improve as the flex or the second AR with Clay. In the major, he made awesome plays all the way through in the Subliners run, and I was just really impressed with him in some of those big time series that they had against the Mutineers. He dominated. Then you go against Faze in the winners finals, and you got to be impressed with that. And so as a whole, I really like how Mac is trending here upwards, and I gotta be impressed with that. So Priest is another guy. I think, wow, we're already packed in the B tier. That's crazy. All right, we're gonna throw him in the C tier. Don't love that. Don't love that at all. And I think that probably means that Octane can also go in the C tier, because right now, even though Octane has been very good in, like I mentioned earlier, insertion destroys, when we talked about him a little bit earlier, the hard point's the question mark, and I'm just not convinced with this team right now. The hard point was really bad for Seattle in this stage, and I have a handful of question marks about the ARs and Gunless and Octane inside of Respawn, or inside of hard point specifically right now, and it just has not been great. Oh baby, we got Hydra up next, and again, this is where it gets very spicy. Obviously, he's been unbelievable. So is he an A tier player? Whoops. Is he an A tier player, or is he an S tier player? Good question. But man, I'm throwing him in the S tier, bro. He has been unbelievable, especially inside of hard points, where he has the highest KD in the CDL during stage 3. He had a 1.3 KD, which is absolutely unbelievable, and completely U-turned how New York played some of these game modes. And in the second half of stage 3, we saw Hydra play very well in S&D, and that was what did it for me to throw him into the S tier, because at first there was some question marks there. He's been unbelievable since. We're just gonna have to see what happens with him. It's just crazy. So Classic is up next. We're gonna throw him into the conversation for the tiebreaker as well. Arcitys is now up, and bro, I gotta give him the tiebreaker over Dashy. That's gonna throw Dashy in the A tier. That's gonna throw Arcitys in the S tier. And that gets our top 6 there. That throws in 2, 4, 6, 8 for our A tiers. Well, that locks us in. Oh, Major Maniac's our last guy here. So we have an interesting debate, and we'll see what happens between those guys. But Arcitys, again, the player of the stage in stage 3. And bro, in the major, he looked unbelievable, and it was finally the Arcitys we were waiting to see. I had him ranked really high in the previous one. I had him in the S tier, because I'm like, I think this is going to be when Arcitys starts popping off. Again, it was a slow start in stage 3 because Faze was really building their map pool, trying out different maps, trying out different strategies. And then in the major, things started clicking for him, of course. And then you saw it in the last few matches for Faze. Arcitys was in insane, making clutch play after clutch play. The ice in his veins was unbelievable. He's an S tier player. And that does throw all 4 Faze players in the S tier, but come on, man. They won stage 1, they got second at stage 2, and then they win stage 3. They're the most balanced team in the CDL, the deepest map pool, and the 4 most individually talented player roster, where any 4 of them could go off, drop streaks, control the game, dominate the game, and make the winning plays. And that's why they're such a dangerous team in a CDL right now, and why they have the makings of a dynasty. Knock on wood for them. We'll see what happens, but they have all the potential in the world to make some insane historic runs right now in a CDL, and they're just that good. So, all right, last few guys here: Temp, Scraps, Assault, Classic, and Major Maniac. So I'm gonna throw Major Maniac inside the E tier for now, just because he's new to the roster, and it puts him in a tough spot. So with that said, we have a handful of other guys here inside the D tier, and this is some really, really tough conversations to have. So we need 2, 4, 6, 8. We could have 2 of these guys go into the C tier. We could move 2 of these guys who are currently in the D tier up to the C tier. This is tough because all of them could be there. Assault's been a guy who I've been pretty impressed with, and they all have been very inconsistent. I think Temp is probably inside the D tier. I'm gonna leave him here. Classic, I'm gonna throw inside of the E. Oh man. Inside the E tier, there's rumors that he's going to be on Seattle next. We'll see what happens. That seems pretty likely at this point. And so there's a chance he might not be on a roster though, which is possible. So that's why I'm considering throwing him in the E tier. But as a performance-wise, I just don't think Classic was that good during stage 3. Was some of the other Paris guys that much better? No, but we got to throw somebody in the E tier. So I'm going to throw Classic in the E tier. Actually, we're only rating 47 players because Felo, right now, we don't know who the 48th player is. And so I guess we'll just have 5 in the E tier, I guess. So now we have to decide on 1 to go inside the C tier. You could throw Silly there, Silly, Chino. Right now we have all 4 LEG players inside of the D tier, which doesn't really feel that fair considering they've been very competitive with some incredibly good teams during stage 3. So I don't love that. The question is, which guy do you throw there? And right now, all of them specialize in different ways where they all do very different things for the team. I'm gonna throw Assault inside the C tier, as right now their best performing player, I would say, of stage 3. Scraps had I would say a pretty disappointing stage 3 after a very solid stage 2. And so there's actually another thing I really want to talk about. Was I wanted to show you guys kind of my process and how I do this. So let me go get that real quick. Okay, so real quick, this is crazy because while I went to go check Twitter, thank goodness I went to go check Twitter, we have Vivid in a starting lineup. Oh my goodness. Breaking news. Vivid has been sent to, wait for it, the Dallas Empire. Oh my goodness. So Vivid really makes things spicy here. And I really, really like Vivid as a player. The question is, do you throw him in the B tier? That's hard to say. This is probably bad news for Scraps considering literally 2 minutes ago, I just put him in the C tier. I think I'm gonna move Scraps down to the D tier again. Unfortunate. And I'm gonna throw Vivid up in the C tier and go from there. I think Vivid has a ton of potential. We haven't seen him on a roster this talented before. And so the potential for Vivid is very, very high. We know how good he is in Search and Destroy. And so pairing him with Shotzzy is gonna be a ton of fun considering how fast of a player Vivid is. And so hopefully Vivid and Shotzzy can really have a fun time together on the map and see how they play, which would be a blast. So that's the question. I'm not confident enough to throw Vivid in the B tier at this point, but there is a ton of potential for him to be up there with, you know, Shotzzy and those guys a little bit later on. So I guess we're gonna have to see. What I was gonna show you guys is actually this is kind of how I do it is I do a little like pre-run and I throw them all into an early tier list. I kind of like, all right, these are the guys who I want to have potentially to discuss for the S tier. Here's some of the guys for the A, the B, the C, the D. And so you can see I had a really, really tough D tier discussion. And then we had, you know, a really tough A tier discussion, S tier discussion. So in a dream world where I had maybe no limits about where I was putting guys, this might be what my tier list looks like. So that was kind of the debate that I was having there because there's so many freaking good players in the CDL. Forcing myself to put them into numbered tiers thing is what makes it really interesting and makes the debate fun. So this is a really, really long episode. This might be our longest tier list of all time. I'm not sure. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Obviously, I would love to talk for 10 minutes about every single player. So check out the podcast. Check out my episode of 1v1 Me Bro, the new series with guests. Our first episode was with I Hold Shift. We talked about some of the roster mania. We went over and drafted super teams, which was a really, really fun draft. Go check that one out. And we talked about some broadcasting, how to get into the CDL, how to get a job in esports. And so go check that video out. It was my most recent video I posted besides this one, of course. I hope you guys enjoy it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you guys really enjoyed it. But as always, guys, I'm your boy, Faze, and guys, we will see you next time. I'm out.